Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Aaron, and in today's video I want to cover the patch 7.2 Subtlety Rogue for PvP. I feel like I should have made this guide a while ago, but with a few comments and a few private messages I've gotten in the game, a lot of people still are unsure or simply to want to learn more about dealing more damage as a Subtlety Rogue. So that's why I'm making this video, to cover all the basics. I also want to use this video as kind of like a preface video to make sure I get this knocked out of the way and ready for patch 7.25, because a lot of rogue changes will be coming out. I want to be able to cover Subtlety, Outlaw, and Assassination as soon as the patch drops, so I'll be spending a lot of time trying to make sure you guys get the most up-to-date guides as soon as possible. Regardless, I hope you guys enjoy the video, I hope you enjoy the guide, and I hope if anything you might find at least a thing or two in order to help you improve regarding PvP. Without further ado, let's begin. Alright, so let's talk about the talents. Master Subtlety for the damage increase, Subterfuge for the extension of Shadow Dance. Then we have Elusiveness for the damage reduction, although you can go to the darkness. In most cases, the damage reduction is better than self-heal. Prayer on the Weak for the setups. Premeditation because it makes your combo point generation and ability use a lot smoother. The Master Shadows and Vigor are together for the energy regeneration, because you'll be spamming a lot of abilities, so you will need the energy. In the Honor Talents, Gladius Medallion, unless you're a human or an orc, where you can go Relentless or Adaptation in some cases. But if you're not sure, stick to Gladius Medallion. Next row, Reinforced Armor, or Sparring if physical melee give you trouble. And physical melee would be something like a Warrior, Windwalker Monk, Outlaw Rogue, so there's not a lot of classes that really fit into Sparring. In most cases, you can just roll Reinforced Armor and you should be just fine. Maneuverability is best for most situations, but you can go cut to the chase if you're playing against Rogues or Pharaohs in 2v2s in particular. Next row, we have Shadow Scars, which is amazing for the cooldown reduction. You can go Smoke Bomb for 2s and some 3s, but that's really as far as it goes. In most PvP situations, you'll be just fine running Shadow Scorettes. Next row, it's more of a your option. You have Cold Blood at a 1 minute cooldown that gives you an next Cheap Shadow Strike 10% of your enemy's health just whopped off. Or you can go for Dagger in the Dark for a little bit increased damage for the sustain ability of your class. I'm not sure exactly which one is the best, but I do prefer Cold Blood, because when you're going against a Restoration Druid who keeps sitting in bear form, no matter if they're in bear, cat, or they're night elf form, in most cases you'll still be able to knock off 10% of their health without worries about the tankiness. In the last row, we have Phantom Assassin for the Shadow Dance duration and automatically giving this almost to death, so you never really have to spam this ability ever. Or Thieves Bargain in some occasions, but I don't really like Thieves Bargain. So those are the talent options for a Subtlety spec. Now, as a spec of Subtlety, you have a couple different mechanics that keep your class fun, exciting, and somewhat difficult but rewarding to play. This spec is all about setups. You must know how to properly combine your abilities, sometimes in a specific order, sometimes out of order, but you must be able to understand how to perform setups. You must understand how to stun lock your targets if you want to do any potential damage and be overall effective as a Subtlety Rogue. You also must realize that CC is one of your biggest advantages, and being able to master your crowd control abilities from Sap to Blind to Kidney Shots, Cheap Shots. All these abilities are gonna come into play, allowing you to be the most effective at controlling the enemy target. As a Subtlety Rogue, the main ability you must maintain at all times is Symbols of Death, which can only be used in stealth. So this is part of the thing where you would do a setup. You would start in stealth and you apply Symbols of Death in order to give you a 20% damage increase and making your next Shadow Strike a critical strike. Besides that, the only other ability you should maintain on your targets is Nightblade. Nightblade is basically a third of your damage. You allow yourself to deal damage to the enemy based on combo points you spend as a finisher, and it's a magical dot. There is a slow effect to this dot, as you will see right here. There's a slow effect that can be dispelled, but it changes so that Nightblade, the actual damage, cannot be dispelled, so the enemies will take full duration worth of damage. Besides all of that, your general rotation is build combo points with Shadow Strikes or Backstabs. Once you have 5 or 4 combo points, utilize them into Nightblade to maintain the dot on the enemy, Eviscerate to consume excess combo points and deal damage, use Kidney Shots to CC the target, and we'll talk about CC in a little bit, but part of the mechanic also for Subtlety is to maintain Shadow Dance. Shadow Dance allows you access to abilities like Cheap Shot and Shadow Strike, and you'll be able to weave those in to stun lock the enemy, and allowing you to use Shadow Strikes for more damage increase, more combo point generation, and overall effectiveness in spending your energy. That's basically the basic rotation of the spec, but there's still a lot more to cover. Subtlety as a spec is a master of control. You should be able to control the enemy while being able to dish out as much damage to them as possible, whether it be in the opener, whether it be in middle of a game, whether it be in a swap. And in the Subtlety Rogue, you need to know how to properly maintain control over the enemy. Let me showcase exactly what I mean. Cheap shot the enemy into a Shadow Strike, into a Nightblade for a setup, Shadow Dance, Shadow Strike, cheap shot to maintain my stun, Eviscerate, cheap shot again, Shadow Strike to fill up the combo points, Eviscerate. In that small opportunity, I maintained a stun on my enemy the whole time. I had a Nightblade setup, and I was spamming as many Shadow Strikes and Eviscerate as I could in between. To be able to coordinate these abilities one after the other is the way to play Subtlety. You need to be able to lock the enemy down no matter what situation and be able to manage your combo points. Some of the other aspects you should learn about Subtlety is Shadowy Techniques. Your auto attacks have a chance to generate free combo points. As you saw, I didn't press any abilities, nothing came up on here on my True FGCD. No abilities were used. I'm just auto attacking the enemy, and at all times you'll always generate some combo points in the enemy. So this is something that's going to happen. So if you're able to maintain control and attention on the combo points right here, you might be able to use this to your advantage, where let's say you need a Shadow Strike, but all of a sudden you got free combo points. Now you don't need that Shadow Strike anymore in order to, let's say, get a full Eviscerate on the enemy. So this is something for you to watch out when you PvP. The way Wavelength of Strikes works right now, and will still change with the next patch, your finisher moves have a 20% chance per combo point to generate 40 energy. So let's say I spend all my energy onto the enemy. Let's say I just spam feint back to back until I'm fully out of energy. As long as you have enough energy to get, let's say, a Nightblade, it'll actually reward you more energy. So you'll consume that 25 energy, but it'll reward you 40 energy. So you always need to maintain your energy at least above 25, maybe even closer to 35, in order to make sure you never fall too far behind. Your finisher moves reduce their main cooldown of your Shadow Dance by 3 seconds, so the more finishes you can use with your Nightblade, Eviscerate, and your Kidney Shot, the shorter the cooldown will be on your Shadow Dances. Alright, now let's talk a little bit about cooldowns, offensive major cooldowns, and there's a few that I have for you guys. Subtlety doesn't really have too many offensive cooldowns. For the most part, your damage is sustained, but your Artifact Weapon Gorm's Bite is an interesting one. 1 minute cooldown deals decent shadow damage for PvP, slows the target, and grants 30 energy over 6 seconds. It also awards 3 combo points. The way you use this ability, and the best way to use it, is when you need energy and combo points at the same time, so you can get in the most out of the value. But it does deal decent damage, and it does generate 3 combo points, so if anything, you can use this ability and should use it when you need the energy, when you need the combo points present. Let's say you have 2 combo points in an enemy. Let's say you Shadow Strike them, Shadow Strike the enemy, and then you're thinking, okay, I need more combo points. I need more combo points. Gorm's Bite, it's perfect, it's available. Now I have it. Now I can throw the enemy in the kidney, and I can go to Shadow Dance, Shadow Strike, Nightblade, Shadow Strike, maybe Cheap Shot, and then Eviscerate, and then maybe Cheap Shot the enemy again, just to control him. Gorm's Bite, if anything, should be used for 3 combo points, but it's best to be used when you need the energy and combo points together. And it has a fairly short cooldown. Then we have Shadow Blades. Now Shadow Blades are a little bit wonky. They do sound like a damage increase, and they are to some extent, but not as much as you think. Back in Pandaria, Shadow Blades would add shadow damage to all of your abilities. This adds shadow damage to your auto attacks and allows all abilities to generate a combo point to generate an additional combo point. So your cheap shots would go from generating 3 combo points to 4, and your Shadow Strikes would go from 2 to 3 for the duration of Shadow Blades. Now, the way I would use it, and I would use Shadow Blades mainly during setups like you normally would, with the cheap shots and Shadow Strikes alternations, but when you have Shadow Blades available, basically you have so much more of an influx of combo points coming in that sometimes it's difficult to get the most value out of them. So even if you, let's say, are overdrawing on combo points, don't worry about it. That's something that you might do a couple of times when you start playing Subtlety, or when you begin to really explore Subtlety as a PvP option for you. But in some occasions, you might be able to go through it and be able to utilize Shadow Blades when you have enough combo points. Like, let me try commenting exactly what's going on. I got my Shadow Blades available. I'm gonna Cheap Shot, Shadow Strike, Nightblade my enemy, then pop Shadow Dance, Cheap Shot right here, Eviscerate, and Cheap Shot again at 4 combo points, 5 Cheap Eviscerate. Now I'm gonna be spamming Shadow Strikes, and I'm watching up for my energy, because normally you will be just spamming as many abilities as possible right afterwards. I'm just watching for my energy in case I generate 1 extra combo point. But if any of the Shadow Strikes, for whatever reason, maybe with Shadowy Techniques together, would generate 4 combo points or 5, then I definitely would just use Eviscerate. So with Shadow Dance, with Shadow Blades, it's more about watching out and being a little bit on your toes in regards to combo points, because you can get more value out of them in some cases, not always. And if you're not sure exactly if you're not fast enough, or maybe you're playing with latency, in most cases just go through rotation and ignore the fact that you turn on comm points. But in some cases you can utilize the extra comm points that you gain. That's all I'm trying to say regarding Shadow Blades. Another advantage of Subtlety, and I had to go out to the farm just to show you. This is something you can utilize in arenas and BGs. Shuriken Storm. It awards a common point per target hit. So let's say you have a bunch of picks here, about 5. In a single Shuriken Storm, 4 I guess, you can get full combo points, and you're able to spread damage like that to more than one enemy. Say you got full combo points, and let's say you want to go on the healer and hit him with a Nightblade. Normally they wouldn't die that fast. Let's say you go and get a bunch of combo points in a BG or an arena, and you try to deal more damage to more than one target. You have the healer dotted, now you have your main target dotted. Let's say you go generate a few more, just a few more of the AoE damage, and you want to make sure the hunter is also dotted, because a good portion of your damage comes from your Nightblades. So being able to utilize Shuriken Storm in a clustered situation where a bunch of people are really close to one another gives you free common points to use on whatever. Spending common points allows you to get charges of Shadow Dance back as well. So it's a win-win situation for a lot of people. But it's best to utilize your Shuriken Storm in areas where you don't have a lot of people crowd controlled at the same time. Let's say you have a paladin comes in and uses a flash of light to blind everybody in the area. You don't want to break it with Shuriken Storm. So it's best to use Shuriken Storm on areas where you know people are not crowd controlling, because otherwise breaking CC is just something bad rogues do way too much. But with practice, of course, you should be able to get yourself to get accustomed to how much damage you're throwing out and who has what CC on them, and then be able to have a little bit more awareness regarding your spec and what you're trying to accomplish with it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I tried to throw in as much as I could in order to help you, give you some tips regarding Subtlety in terms of PvP. Just a bunch of things about combo points, a little bit about the mentality of playing a Subtlety Rogue in order to help you guys truly do more damage, and give a little bit of an insight of what I go through in terms of my thought process regarding the spec when I'm trying to deal the most amount of damage. Anyway, my name has been Dowden. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in the next video.